Okay, so for his boots, we're going to use black soot. And black soot, because black, you don't need very much. So I'm just going to grab a little bitty bit on the end of my brush. But if you can see my brush down there with a little dab right on the end, that's quite a bit. You can always get more, but it's best to start with just a little bit. And I'm going to start right here along the bottom and lay down my first line. And again, I'm going to just use that little bit and wipe it across his boot. And I don't care if I run out before I get to the other side like I have right here, because I'm going to put some more on after it dries. So over here it's really gray, but over here it's barely any at all. That's okay, because we'll add some later. We'll let it dry first. So same for the other side. I grab me a little bit more ink, and I'm just going to lay it right down the side here. And then I'm going to use that little line I put down to wipe across his boot. And I just wipe it until I run out. Sometimes I run out and sometimes I don't. Like this one over here is a little bit darker than the other side. But that's just because the line I put down the first time, it had a little bit more ink on there than the other side. Okay, those look pretty good. So we're going to let that dry. And while that's drying, let's go up here and give his mittens a little bit of color. So for his mittens, we're going to use bundled sage. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of my bundled sage, and I'm going to lay down my first little pile right at the bottom of his glove, wipe off my ink brush, come back with just water, and spread that up to the top. So you've got light green up here at the top of his mitten, and a darker green down here at the bottom. That's what we want. So we'll let that dry. Let's go do the other side. Same for this side. Give it a little swipe of color down here at the bottom. If you still have a bunch of ink on your brush, wipe it off. Come back and use that line you laid down to move up to the top of his mitten. And already you've created a shadow just by having your line down here that's still darker down here at the bottom of his mitten, but it's lighter up here at his thumb. And the same thing for his scarf is going to be green. So let's go ahead and do the bundled sage on his scarf. Let me turn him just a little bit here. Okay, and it's going to be dark where the puppy is, so I'm going to lay down my little bit of ink right here where the puppy is, and underneath, and it kind of wraps over right here, so I'm going to add a little bit right there. And then that ink I put down, I'm going to use to fill in that space. And then we'll get a little bit more so we can do the scarf. So I'm going to make the bottom of his scarf a little bit darker, so I'm going to get my ink and run my little line along the bottom. And then use that line and wipe it towards the top of his scarf and just fill it in. Okay, and let's get this little, turn him a little bit here. Let's get this one. I'm going to color the little stripe a different color, so I'm going to get the end of his scarf with the green. And then use my line to color into up to the top of this little scarf. So again, it's darker down here at the bottom, but it's lighter up here at the top. And same for this one. Down here's the bottom, the back side of his scarf. Let's get this side. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So I think I'll go up here and still add a little bit of more pink to his little cheeks. So I'm going to grab me a little bit of my worn lipstick. I'm just going to give it a little dab. Wipe my brush off and then just kind of pounce on it a little bit. And wipe off because I picked up ink on my brush. And then just kind of dab it along the edges with just water. Wipe off your brush. Dab this side a little bit. Wipe off your brush. Come back and check. This one's got a little line, so I'm going to dab that just a little bit more. But make sure to wipe it off in between each time, because every time you touch that, you're picking up a little bit of that pink. And depending on where you're going with it, you may not want that everywhere else. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's go down and add some more color to his boot. So his boots, again, are black soot, so I'm going to pick me up a little bit of black soot. And I'm going to run my line down the back side of his boot. Spread that out a little bit. Then I'm going to wipe off my excess and then use that bit I put down to go over to the other side of his little boots. Okay, same for this side. I'm going to put my ink down the back side of his boot. And then I'm going to wipe it off because I have quite a bit on there. And then I'm just going to use that bit I laid down to spread it around on his boot to the other side. Okay, so we'll let that dry. And then I'm going to go up here and he doesn't have very much hair, but he does have a little bit. So for his hair, I'm going to use walnut stain for his hair. So I'm going to grab just a little dab on the end of my brush. And I don't know if you can see that, but that's even less than I've used for the black soot. But I just want to color these little strands of hair, so I'm just going to put a little dab on there. Try not to get it everywhere. That's why this detailer brush has a little fine point that works really good for these little areas. So grab a little bit of your bundled sage, put it down here where you want it to be darkest, and then dip your brush off on your paper towel and use it to wipe the water to wipe it up a little bit. Grab a little bit more, put it on the bottom of this one. Use that to spread up to the top of his mitten. Let's darken up the bottom of his scarf here a little bit. And you may have put on more ink than I put on the first time. That's okay. He may not need to have more put on there. It just depends on what the look you're going for. So just look at him and go, do I want to add a little bit more, or do I think that's enough on there? But after a while, after you've done it a few times, you won't use quite so much. You'll learn that a little bit, and depending on how wet your brush is, you may use less or more. And if I was to color this one again, it would look completely different than what it looks like on the card I made. So it's already looking different than the one I made the first time, but that's okay. Okay, so let's go and let's color this puppy while let's color this puppy while the scarf's drying. So we got our little puppy, and this little puppy down here on the ground is going to be frayed burlap. So I'm going to grab a little bit of my frayed burlap, and his nose is going to be a different color, so I'm just going to give him some frayed burlap right along the side, and maybe up the side of this boy's pant leg, maybe where his ear attaches to his head. And then I'm going to wipe my brush off, and I'm going to use that to color his ear, that little bit I laid down there. Wipe the brush off, come over here and use this little bit I put down on his face, and just wipe that around and color in his little head. Okay, and then I'll grab me a little bit more, and And I'll do down here on his body. So I'm going to go underneath of his head and down the edge of the little boy's boot. Maybe the bottom of his foot, up the little crack of his legs there. And then I'm going to wipe my excess off again. And I'm going to use this ink that I laid down with just my wet water brush and spread it around on his body. Okay, and we'll let that dry, and then I'll come back and I'll add some more, and that'll darken up his little shadows here on his face. So, while that's drying, let's go up here and add the second color to our scarf, which is walnut stain. So I'm going to grab me a little bit of walnut stain on my brush. And again, I want the bottom of my scarf to be darkest, so I'm going to lay down my line at the bottom of his scarf. And then wipe off my excess and use that little bit I put down to color the rest of that little stripe in. Okay, same for the other one. Grab a little bit on my brush. And use that little bit color in the rest. Okay, and I also want to color these little tassels that color. So I'm not going to be too, I'm just going to give them a quick swipe. You know, if they look like they got some bigger areas, I'll color those. Just go right down the stripe. Dab my brush off, grab another little bit. And see how this one looks like it's probably two pieces, but we're just going to make it one. Just go up here. Choop. Looks like it's colored in there. And I'm going to give him a little color around his head here. Maybe on his snout. Make his ear a little bit darker maybe. Remember, you're coloring it, so you can make it any color you want. You can maybe instead of making this puppy brown, you can make this puppy black, make his boots brown, make the other puppy this color or walnut stain, make his pants green. You know, change it up a little bit. They don't have to be the exact colors that I wrote down. That's just a starting point to get you going. Okay, and it looks like his little snout right here is antique linen is what I colored it. So I'm going to grab a little bit of that, and I'm just going to give it a little brush. Dab off a little bit and just use water to kind of swirl it around here. Lighten it up a little bit. And then for his little tag, I colored that black soot. I'm going to grab a little bit of that. Make his tag a little bit darker.